Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham, your Kings insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me, Mr. Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast and the Kings Herald. What's going on, Brenden?
I am doing good, James. Got to have a pretty fun experience at Golden One Center yesterday, and I'm glad to be in the door every single home game for the rest of the year, and hopefully for as long as you're going. I'm aiming for a decade plus, 2 decades. I don't know. We're gonna see, but I'm
All
doing
right,
good.
that's awesome. I like to hear that that you're excited and you want to keep doing this forever. It's a bear. It wears you out.
Give me
It
give
does
me
some.
one more year, and then I'll be over it. But
Yeah. I think like we talk about this. You have to pace yourself, and like everyone, like a lot of like I started at Cowbell Kingdom, and my partner for a podcast and my partner on Cowbell was John Santiago for years, and John would he wouldn't stop, and then all of a sudden he would snap, and I could see it coming, and he would the anxiety would start building up, and he would get all crazy, and then boom, he'd be like, I need to disappear for like 2 weeks. And then he would go away, and then he would refresh. He would come back, and he would go right back to killing himself every day. And
I do the same thing. I don't remember if we talked about this off pod or maybe it was last recording, but I am very guilty of the exact same thing. And I feel it coming, and then all of a sudden, I just have so many things I want to get done. I'm so stressed about the entire list that I can't even do one of them and have to do a full reset, which feels like crap the first couple of days because I'm not even actually relaxed. I'm just worried about not doing the stuff that I can't be doing. Still getting a rhythm there.
yeah, you got to pace yourself. I think that's the biggest thing. It is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And you have to take mental health days. You have to look at a day and go, okay, I need to not do anything. And that's really hard because it seems like every time you try to do one of those days, something stupid happens and you get drawn right back in. All of a sudden, I get a text or I get a an email comes through or something breaks on social media, and you're like, oh, I was supposed to have today off. I'll tell people like this: maybe a handful of times in the last 12 years, I haven't taken my laptop to dinner with my wife. Maybe a handful of times. And that's like a very, very special occasion where I know that there's no way something's happening. I always have my laptop with me everywhere. My car is like if it were broken into, I would be in shambles because my laptop is always in there. My backpack is always there because there's so many times where it's like, hang on, I got something going on. Give me 2 seconds. I'll pull my laptop, write something really quick, put it out, and then go back to dinner or whatever it is. So,
Yeah. Shout out to Mrs. Ham, understanding and the sacrifice.
that's one of the things I tell young reporters. There's two things. Well, I mean, there's a lot of things I tell. Like Brenden can tell you, there are a lot of things I will talk to you about. But when I talk to young reporters, it's number one, when you're young, start watching what you're eating because this job is absolutely brutal on your body. And a huge, huge percentage of beat writers are heavy, they're out of shape, they're in poor health. And it's because, take for instance, like on a normal day where we're having shoot around at 10:30 in the morning. I leave my house at 9:30, I get to shoot around for 10:45. Then I get stuck in Sacramento because, gas prices are astronomical and I'm not going to drive home and back. So I leave the house at 9:30 in the morning. I get home at around 12:30 or 1, and you have dinner around 5 o'clock at the arena, sometimes 6. But then it's midnight and you're starving. And on the way home, you stop at Taco Bell. And so you end up eating very poorly. And I like Logan Murdoch has been around the Kings the last couple of days from the Ringer. And I watched Logan as a young guy coming up and, doing his thing, but not really writing. And, he's doing audio and all kinds of different stuff. But then when he went to NBC, I pulled him aside and said, look, this is, it's a big deal. You need to maintain yourself. And you also, like you need to watch what you eat. You need to give up soda because there's soda machines in every place that we're at, and it's unlimited drinks all night long. You need to switch to water and tea, and like get off all of these things, because if not, it's a sedentary lifestyle. It is, and you end up having a bunch of health issues, and I see it from guys all the time. And we've lost a lot of beat writers. That it's a hard job on your body. It's a hard job. It's a lot of fun, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. And it's how my brain works, and I dig it. But at the same time, it is a brutal grind that wears you down to a nub, and you end up having poor eating habits and all kinds of other things. And the second thing I tell people is, if you're gonna survive, if you're a lot of beat writers are divorced, and so you need a very, very good partner.
Lawyer. Oh,
Yeah, a very good partner. Yes, there you go. My partner is an attorney, so that I got that one covered, sort of, I guess.
there you go.
But you need someone who is going to be understanding, because if not, like you're not going to last. Like it's a brutally hard job on everyone involved. And I think the good thing for me is that about 5 or 6 years ago, my oldest started becoming a basketball fan. So we talk basketball a lot. That does help. But like my youngest, he's not a basketball guy at all. All right. So Brenden, we're going to get to the show. I do have dogs roaming free today, so I'm going to apologize. Hopefully family members will be home soon and I won't have dog issues. But if you hear little tiny thump thump thumps, that's the corgi. If you hear nails, like really noisy nails, that's the pug. And then if the big guy starts barking, that's the only time you'll hear him, because he's super quiet outside of that. So apologies about the dog situation, but it
I think
happens.
we got a tiny pug appearance for a second there.
Yes. It's actually the corgi. For some reason, her nails are clicking today as well on the hardwood floors. But yeah, the corgi is wandering around me. The pug will claw at my leg. He wants to get up and sit on my lap, even though he weighs like 30 something pounds and he's not sitting on my lap while we do a podcast. Okay, so let's get to some basics. Number one, thank you so much for subscribing to the Kings Beat podcast on YouTube. We have crested the 1,000 mark. We're going to ask you to keep going. So if you're watching the podcast right now, give us a thumbs up. And also hit the subscribe button. Kings Beat, there's a corgi. Kings Beat, off the record with the Kings Beat, virtual happy hour part for infectious disease control is scheduled for March 24th from 5:30 to 7:30, and that's with Scott Moak. And I'm super excited about that. Scott Moak has incredible stories. PA announcer for the Kings. That is for premium subscribers to the Kings Beat. So make sure you jump on and do a premium subscription to the Kings Beat. Also, we still have a promo code. If you look in the YouTube link, promo code for the merch shop, which has cool things like this. I think we have some new stuff coming up relatively soon, but jump on board, and there's a 15% off code down below in the description of the YouTube for the Kings merch shop, and so you can get some cool stuff. Brenden stuff is still on the way. I promise. He's getting it.
All right. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. All right, so Brenden, the Sacramento Kings lost their third straight. I'm just going to start with this blanket question. Is this the best of all possible worlds? Because they're playing much better. And I'm quoting Dr. Pangloss there, I believe, Professor Pangloss from Candide, but the best of all possible worlds. They are playing well. They are fighting. They are giving the fans moments to cheer about. And they are losing. All of those things seem to be a good thing.
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to be careful about painting the Sacramento Kings as being in this amazing scenario. But with what the goals we have in mind for the rest of this season, yesterday was definitely best case scenario. The only thing that could have gone better is Sabonis getting another night against Jokic and really matching up well there. But a loss in the end is the best thing for this team. And I don't think that the players or coaching staff is out there trying to do that or anything like that. And you can clearly see the fight in these players. And the fact that there is progress, I've been kind of unsure how to traverse and talk about these last few games. In the Denver one was a lot better. They were in it the entire game. They actually came back from a deficit. But even in those previous games where they blew leads, it's tricky because I do want to point to those first halves where it's like, okay, well, they did play good enough to get 19, 20-point leads. And I don't think we were seeing the team do that before. So, you're showing that there's a good team in here. Doing it consistently is the difference. The same way difference between a decent team, good team, great team, is that consistency. So they need to do that a little bit more often. But certainly for what we're thinking for the rest of this year, I will happily take a 32, 10, and 5 night from De'Aaron where he hits 4 threes, almost 5 because one of them got reverted to a 2 with his foot on the line, and the Kings are still competitive in a game without Domantas Sabonis against the MVP.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I saw people one of the first reactions to my 6 quick thoughts from post game last night was, I can't believe people keep spending money on this worthless product. And I thought to myself, man, Kings fans had a good time. That was a really, really good game. You got beat by a much better team, a team that's been good all year, and a team that has I don't even think they made a single change at the deadline. They picked up Brent Forbes at some point during the season, right?
Earlier in the year, yeah.
Yeah, but overall, that is a really, really good Denver Nuggets team that was in the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago. They have the reigning MVP, who, my goodness, that dude is so freaking amazing. Some of the moves he made on Damian Jones, I almost feel like he wouldn't try that on Sabonis because Sabonis would I don't know, do something to him, catch him with an elbow. You're going to do, but my goodness, that spin move he had, spin move. I think he traveled, but I don't care. Watching him do that stuff at what is he, 7'1", 280 pounds or whatever he is. He's just a humongous athlete, and somehow he does stuff that, we haven't seen before. And to me, he's a joy to watch, and he's funny. And, I would, every time I watch him, I'm even more impressed. To me, he should be a 2-time MVP right now. That's where I'm at with him. I think he should be the MVP again, because he's that good, and because they've played without Michael Porter Jr. and Murray all season long, or at least most of the season with Michael Porter. But yeah, he is so incredibly impressive to watch. And I don't know if you saw, someone put out a chart who plays defensively, who holds him to the least things. And Sabonis is really high on the list. He's very good against Jokic. And I thought he outplayed Jokic in the last 2 games that we saw these two teams match up.
He did. It probably has something to do with just playing such a similar style himself, and just understanding where kind of he wants to work on the floor, and taking away ideal scenarios as somebody that can relate and plays a similar style. Definitely think that Jokic is still going to do what he wants against Sabonis. Sabonis will fight him and be more physical. And, it certainly isn't the case where you're feeling like you're just absolutely destroyed. Like in the last time these two teams matched up, the second Sabonis came off the floor and Damian Jones was on guarding Jokic, it was a disaster. Last night was better for Damian Jones. Alex Len didn't fare all too well, but Damian Jones did pretty well. And yeah, it was a joy to watch Jokic. 38, 18, and 7. He didn't hit a single 3 on his en route to 38 points. 15 of 24 from the field, 8 of 9 from the free throw line. And nobody else really was stepping up. I was kind of shocked to see at the end of the night that Monte Morris had 20 points. Happened pretty quietly to me. Aaron Gordon was not too hot in his return to Northern California. Trey Lyles was too much to handle for him on either end of the floor, apparently. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think that maybe if we watched a little bit more Embiid or Giannis, that we might feel like they're rubbing shoulders with Jokic. But having seen, it feels like this Denver team has been at Golden One Center 3 times in the last like month or 2 months. So definitely seen a lot of Jokic and blown away every single time.
Yeah. It's funny, like you bring up a couple things. Number one, every time Brennan says rubbing shoulders, everyone has to drink.
I
That's
don't know
me.
why that's my word.
I like that phrase. You use it, and interesting. It always fits with when you're using it, but you don't just use it in one when it comes to like the standings. Now you're talking about players. Like I dig it. Yeah, I mean, like, look, Aaron Gordon just really isn't very good. Like I don't want to be like horribly rude, but like he's if like you considered him in the same level as like Harrison Barnes, I don't think so. Like, man, that he's a mess. Like, the last
He
time they played,
is.
didn't he take over in the first quarter and had like 6 points?
But was hitting unsustainable shots, right? Like there were a couple, I think, in the fourth or maybe third quarter when Sacramento was kind of going on a run where, if Aaron Gordon hits this shot, that it'd be a killer, but you are absolutely fine with him shooting that because he just not converting that night. I mean, 0 of 5 from 3. I do think he's pretty solid on the defensive end, but didn't get to show it all too much in that game. Yeah, I do think Barnes is better. I think that Gordon also looks a little bit better when he can focus more on defense and there's more other guys to space the floor. He doesn't have to shoot 5 threes a game when Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray are out there, maybe helping with that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, he strikes me as a Jeremy Grant-esque, which is like the role they tried to get him to fill. And I think that Jeremy Grant is better and shown more of like a bag or potential on the offensive end, even if he's not the most efficient when he's creating for himself. But weirdly, I mean, they need a guy that can shoot better. And Aaron Gordon mold with a respectable 3-point shot on okay volume is kind of what the Kings are missing.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, he kind of reminds me, like, I've always thought of him a little bit like AK-47, like Andrei Kirilenko. But the more you watch him, the more you're like, okay, he doesn't do all of those things that I thought he would do. And maybe you're right. Maybe it is that they don't have the other guys that would make him look better. But at the same time, they got a bunch of shooters. Like that team they have plenty of floor spacers. And I mean, if you gave Sabonis all those floor spacers, he would be much better. Like he would have, a couple of triple doubles here already with the Sacramento Kings. Yeah, I think it's an interesting, like, to watch the different types of team builds because when you after this, I'll say it's really weird that after the Sabonis trade, like you played the Nuggets 3 times in like the next 10 games. So we're getting like a really good look at the type of team that you probably need to build because the Nuggets with Sabonis and the Nuggets with Jokic, I mean, that is a type of big man. And I think if you look at the difference between Sabonis and Jokic, I think Sabonis is a tougher player. He's a guy who is going to give it to you a little bit more. He might even be a little bit better defensively. But Jokic is a better scorer, and he's so incredibly huge. Like he gets rebounds all the time. That's almost like the tall kid on in middle school type deal. Who's just like reaching up above everybody else. I think the pug just like got his revenge on the corgi, like headbutted the corgi. I heard some skids and some
Battles
squealing
going on at the Ham
Yeah,
House.
the battle royales at the Ham House.
Yeah. Which one is Sabonis and which one is Jokic here?
Oh,
I guess we can't call
yeah.
Sabonis a pug. That's disrespectful.
I don't think either one of them. Okay, so the corgi is a bit of a bully. She likes to herd the pug, and the corgi's a baby, but she herds the pug like into corners, and then he just sits there and snorts. He doesn't know what to do. But every once in a while, he'll take off running at the corgi and headbutt the corgi. Um, and that to me is like, oh look, you finally stepped up, and you're not going to get pushed around.
I've had enough.
Yeah, exactly. He's had enough. Interesting dog talk here on the King's Beat podcast. Sabonis, we just kind of glossed over the fact that Sabonis didn't play, and the reason why Sabonis didn't play is very specific. He was suspended by the league on Wednesday, and the Kings came out firing with their comments. They were not at all happy, and
I have the exact quote.
yeah,
If you want
let's hear it. Let's hear it.
It is, as I swipe. I really thought I had this right in front of me.
You can do it.
I know. I totally passed it. God. Anyways.
It was something like, we back Sabonis because he is awesome, and we want to make sure he thinks that we think he is awesome, and that he will stay longer if we say something to back him up in this time of being suspended for a game.
We disagree with the NBA's decision to suspend Domantas Sabonis. He's a consummate professional and the ultimate competitor. We stand behind Domas, and he has our full support. Took me a long
Okay,
time.
you found it. You nailed it. I think my version is like identical.
Same thing.
Yeah, same exact
Did you
thing.
write this, James?
Yeah, I did. I wrote this for them and then sent it over. I'll tell you this. I don't have any problems with Sabonis getting suspended because I saw him bump the official. If the rule is you bump the official and you get suspended, then he deserves to be suspended, letter of the law, and it cost him, I think, something like $140K, right? I don't know what a game check is for him, but I think it's somewhere around there. I think it's it's 113th of your salary. So I didn't do the math, but yeah, that cost him a game check, and a game check is a lot.
127.5 thousand.
Okay, and then did he get a fine on top of that, or just a game check?
I do not know. I just see Bobby
Okay.
Marks, 127,000 is the cost of one game for him.
Okay, so here's the problem I have, Brendan. It's not that he got suspended for that. It's that Julius Randle, like a couple of days before, chucked an official out of the way so he could go like slap fight Cam Johnson in a game against Phoenix, and clearly puts his hand on an official and shoves him out of the way to get to Cam. Right before the All-Star break, we saw Chris Paul berate an official to get a technical, and then walk over and basically give him a shoulder shimmy and like, oh, my bad, sorry, I didn't know you were walking right there, I was looking the other way, pop. And the official's like, what? And then double tech, out of the game. No suspension for either player. And Chris Paul has been, he's the president of the Players Association. He could still get a fine. He could still get a suspension, but he hurt his hand, I think, on the play in question.
Yeah, he hasn't played since.
And he hasn't played since. So there's always an outside shot that he'll get a fine or a suspension. When it comes to Randall, here's the problem that I have. And I looked into like the situation last week. And so I typed into my email, my Gmail search, Randall fine, right? Because it'll pull up all of the times that I've got an email from the league where it says he gets fined. I thought that it was just that I kept getting emails from the league about Randall getting fined, like the same email got sent to me like from 4 or 5 different people. Every once in a while that happens. But that's not what happened. I put out that Randall was fined $15,000 for bumping the official. He was not. He was fined $50,000 for bumping the official. The problem was that there were 5 other emails where Randall has been fined in the last year for doing something by the league. a $50,000, two $25,000 fines, two $15,000 fines. So we're talking about a repeat offender that not specifically with officials, but a repeat offender, like a obscene gesture towards a fan, profanity towards a fan. I think though there were two different. Anyway, my point is that Sabonis, that was the first time he's ever been ejected from a game. It's the first time he's ever got a fine that I can find. I have not seen another fine for Domantas Sabonis. And so you got a first-time offender who gets a game suspension and a $140,000 fine when another dude who just racks up fines gets a $50,000 fine for basically the same thing. Now, you could say he wasn't aiming, like Sabonis was aiming his anger at the official. I don't care. He put his hands on an official. He shoved him out of the way. Sabonis barely bumped the official, like while he was losing his mind, and sometimes you got to do that. But like, what is your take on it? Because again, that's just my understanding of it and my frustration of it. It's not that I think Sabonis didn't deserve to be suspended. I just think the consistency of the league is about the consistency of the Kings from one quarter to the next.
That's a good one. Yeah, I think that when I saw it happen, I'm pretty sure I tweeted right away, this probably means Sabonis is gone for more than just the rest of this game. And, it's just how it works. You bump into a guy, even though it was very slight, and a lot of people pointed that out. I agree. It was very slight, but it was targeted at the ref. And it wasn't like the ref was like moving towards him at the same time. Like, I couldn't justify he thought that he was going to stop before he got there. Like, I think Sabonis intentionally got all the way up to him, a little bump, screaming at him, waving his arms. Like, it looked like a suspension to me. I'm with you on the consistency. If I try to justify some of those other ones, like the Randall thing, he put his hands on him, and you're right. I think that maybe the reasoning is like it wasn't targeted at the ref. He was going for Cam Johnson. I don't know that I necessarily like agree, but if I'm trying to find a potential reason there, but I do think that like if you're gonna follow the rules to a T, then stick with it. You put your hands on a ref, you bumped into a ref in any sort of way. I agree with the Randall thing. Chris Paul probably tried to make it look like he didn't mean to bump into him, or that he like made it try to look like the ref's fault that he bumped, but really got in his way, like typical kind of Chris Paul shenanigans. So I think that like as I sat and watched those other ones yesterday, I could figure out maybe how it was justified different. I don't know that I agree. But yeah, I mean, it's a tricky thing because if you're going to follow it so by the letter, by the book, then do that in every scenario. And they haven't. I agree with you. I think Sabonis deserved that, but it is a little weird to see these other things play out where they don't have the same repercussions.
Yeah, and I think if you're a Sacramento Kings fan, I mean, number one, this goes all the way back to 2002. Everyone's still hell-bent about the 2002 Western Conference Finals and the Kings getting jobbed by the officials, and then Tim Donaghy coming out and saying that it was a league mandate, that they extend the series to 7 games, and then the Kings blew Game 7 by missing free throws. But I think that when you watch enough Kings games, you see enough last 2-minute reports. You see De'Aaron Fox get mugged. You see De'Aaron Fox go to the free throw line, was it 6 times in a game where he scored 44 points and only took 3 or 4 3-pointers. Everything was in the lane. He was getting fouled all the time. Even the 2-minute report acknowledged that they missed a blatant foul in the final 2 minutes that probably changed the outcome of the game. Or at least led to part of the outcome of the game happening. Like, I just think that there's an imbalance that people look at when it comes to the Kings, and it's like, okay, I don't get it. And personally, I like that the Kings came out strong like this. I like that they're trying to back Sabonis, because at the end of the day, those are moments where, like, you can try to help. You can at least put your foot down and say, look, it's like getting a technical. It's like a coach getting a technical. I want to see more technicals from the coaching staff. Like, start yelling and screaming. Get ejected from a game. Like, it's okay. Like, the franchise isn't going to hold it against you. But at the end of the day, if your team is getting jobbed, if you feel like the calls are not going the way that they should, or they aren't balanced, then like make some noise. I totally get it, and that's just for me. I think that it comes back to, it always feels like this is what happens to the Kings, and I don't want to do like the poor me thing when it comes to the Kings, but I've covered this team a long time, and like I've given up on making even tweeting about the 2 minute report, because I think it's the biggest joke there ever was. And to me, it's embarrassing that the league has to put that out there all the time.
Yeah, I don't have the same context of being a Kings fan as long and having to deal with that whole thing that went down in early 2000s. But I tend to think that most fan bases feel like they're getting gypped by the referees or dealt an unfair hand. Maybe not Philly when you're shooting 40 free throws a game between two guys, but I don't know. I try to not point towards the officials all too often, because more often than not, there's a handful of things that the Kings could have done better if they wanted to win a game.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the officiating this year has, like, it's been bad. There's a bunch of replacement guys. It has not been smooth. Even the guy who threw out De'Aaron Fox was the guy who called the game last night too, and he misses a bunch of calls. He makes a bunch of strange calls. I mean, there was the Alex Len Sabonis play in the third quarter where Sabonis pump faked, Alex Len jumped up in the air. They're out by the 3-point line, and Len stops, and then Sabonis initiates contact and throws up like, Jokic. I'm sorry. Jokic throws up like a 20-something foot just prayer, and the official that's literally standing 3 feet away from the play says no call. A second and a half later, a guy on the opposite side makes a call and comes over, and it's just like, look, just call it right. Just call it like consistent. That's all. Like I don't like, again, the Kings record has nothing to do with the officiating this season at all. I mean, they're a bad team.
Yeah. But there were moments. Yeah, like the thing that you just pointed out. There was also one yesterday that was called on the Nuggets. It looked like if you were going to call anything, it would have been offensive goaltending, but instead the call was a 24-second violation, a shot clock violation, which was confusing. And then instantly the other ref ran up to the one that called it and was like, what are we doing here? And they went with inadvertent whistle. I think this was the very end of a quarter, and then that let Denver get back and set their defense.
Yeah, that was a very strange call. The play at the end of the half where it was absolutely clear that Austin Rivers fouled De'Aaron Fox before the whistle, and then they tried to wave it off, and Alvin Gentry is literally ready to hit someone with a clipboard, like losing his mind. And then Austin Rivers gets a tech, and then not only do they reverse, they like got the call right, but they announced the call incorrectly when they corrected it. They said, oh no, he was in the act of gathering, he wasn't shooting. And
3 shots.
Like 3 shots, and it's like, oh, what are you doing? So yeah, I just really, really like, I don't know, it's hard to describe. Like those plays, they shouldn't be that hard to call. They shouldn't be. And the fact that we're seeing this play out quite often in this season in particular, and again, I don't think it's one way or another. I just think, like bad officiating is kind of, I mean, Michael Malone got a tech at halftime. And the worst part was, Brennan, Harrison Barnes missed both Austin Rivers and the Michael Malone tech.
Which is so weird. Yeah, tough.
And weird.
Harrison Barnes misses the tech, and then De'Aaron Fox walks to the line and hits 3 free throws in a row. I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. I will say, I think Boogie, with his 8 minutes and 5 fouls, probably agrees with you that the officiating was a little tough. What do you think of seeing Boogie again?
Okay, so the one where he hit Damian Jones, I was like, oh no. Like, Damian Jones looked like he wasn't going to get back up. I mean, he hit the canvas hard. I was like, oh, that was not good. That was not good at all. He popped right back up, but that one was clear. The other, like like they called the offensive foul on Damian Jones late too, and it's like, okay, it was an offensive foul, but it was like in a crucial moment in like a touch foul. Like there were so many questionable things, and I think everyone has been frustrated. I mean, like that's not the first team that we've seen collect a bunch of technicals against the Kings. Like, because I know every time everyone starts getting technicals, I put out like the Oprah gif, like you get a tech and you get a tech and you get a tech. So I know it's happened multiple times this season where other teams are super angry at the officiating crews. Um, yeah,
Portland, Robert Covington throwing his mask at an official. It was at the feet of a guy.
okay, that's
But
but he hit the official with his mask, and it's an automatic ejection. And so the problem that he had, what like I don't even know if that was intentional, um,
don't think
but
so.
I guess he'd been doing that the last couple of games, throwing his mask at people, or throwing his mask in the general direction. And so we were talking about this before. I'm what for about half the games this year at Golden One, I'm the poll reporter. So anytime something strange happens and we need like a further explanation, either a home or visiting reporter can file like basically it's not a complaint as much as it is like they can ask a question of the officials. To date, I still haven't gone through the process where I've actually sat in. So I guess what happens is you go and sit in a room and the official is in a different room and we're on Zoom and I have to ask the official the exact question from the reporter, whoever it was. So it could be me who asked a question. It could be Brenden. It could be the visiting person that asked a question. But I also I get a follow up question if I want. It's a very strange situation, but the only time I tried to initiate it was a couple of games ago when Fox something happened with Fox, and then they said it was too late by the time we asked and by the time media relations got to the officials. It's got to be within like half hour or 15 minutes of the end of the game, and they said it took too long. But I haven't had to have the pool report. But it is an interesting way. Again, it's kind of like the last 2 minute report, and the refs aren't going to give you anything. They're going to be like, "No, this is how we saw it," and it's like, okay. Even the Covington thing, that almost triggered the pool report that night, and then the Portland reporters talked to the people that were down on the floor and said no, it was they talked to everybody at halftime. They said no, it was clear. It was clear that he actually hit the official with his mask. But again, if you're gonna throw a guy out for hitting an official with a mask, and you're gonna suspend a guy for touching an official, then you got to suspend everyone for touching an official. You got to spend like no matter what it is, right?
Yeah, definitely some interesting things that have gone on throughout this year. And yesterday's game was quite the quite the experience, especially going into halftime. I think that was the weirdest 5-10 minutes that I've maybe experienced at Golden One. But yeah, I mean, definitely interesting. We heard Harrison Barnes earlier this year. I want to say in that maybe it was the Dallas game where De'Aaron had his career high, tied his career high. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong, but it was just recently on this road trip where Harrison was talking about the officials, and I mean, I haven't heard that this year, but Harrison doesn't seem like the guy to do that.
I
Seems
think that
very
was
rare.
Jokic again. That was against
Was it?
Jokic where he went up for the play and Jokic like hit him with his belly on the backside and knocked him under the rim. They called an and one and then pulled it back off the board and gave the Nuggets the ball, like or they did a jump ball.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
so
that
many
and then
weird.
that's what he's like, "Really? Like are you kidding me?" He's like, "It was clearly a foul." Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But speaking of De'Aaron, who was probably a guy that I think that we've heard could probably get a little bit of a friendlier whistle. I think that there's definitely moments that you see that he's a guy that drives into the lane very often and is happy to play through contact. And we've seen that a lot more again ever since the trade. Really, he looks. I think that the word Alvin's been using is rejuvenated, and that you can very much see. De'Aaron had another great game: 32 points, 10 assists, 5 rebounds. he's playing really, really well, and the team struggles when he's not on the floor. Even when Sabonis has been active, they've struggled recently without De'Aaron, but even more apparent when Sabonis is not out there, obviously.
Yeah, I think the question that we'll probably discuss here is like there's this notion out there that De'Aaron Fox is just putting up hollow stats, and I think that that's you can say that if the team is just literally getting drubbed every single night, and you watch a guy score 12 points in the fourth quarter in a 22-point blowout, and none of those 12 points matter, but now he's got 24 points for the game. I haven't seen any of that. I haven't seen any like stat hunting from De'Aaron Fox. I think most of his things, his scoring opportunities are, most of them are in the flow of the offense, or at least the flow of the offense for a number one option. And so, like, he's attacking the rim, he's doing the fall away, he's hitting his threes. Over the last, what do we say? He's got 14 straight games with 20 or more. Since returning from injury, he's played 13 games, averaging 38 minutes, 28.2 points, 6.5 assists, 4.3 rebounds. He's shooting 51.8% from the field and 38.7% from three on 4.8 attempts per game. He's been excellent. Like, there's no other way to put it. Like, I don't know how else to put it. Like, he has been an elite player. Now, he hasn't been an elite player for the entire season, but for the last 14 games, he's been elite. And I think we're seeing what he can be again. We just have to see it for 82 next year.
We definitely do. At least like 70 of next year. And yeah, none of what he's doing feels all too unsustainable. Maybe this 3-point shooting a little bit will come back down to earth. But I do think that he's better than the percentage that we saw earlier in the year at the same time. Like, it lies somewhere in the middle there. And while like technically it is empty stats because they're not getting wins, right? Like, if you want to be technical with it, but that doesn't mean that his play can't contribute to winning basketball. Just because it's not resulting in wins right now. Like, you need other guys. Like, Devin Booker had this exact same label. I think Zach LaVine saw the exact same thing. DeMar DeRozan got the same label last year when he was in San Antonio. So I think there's a lot of these guys that you can see that you would help a team win, but you can't do it by yourself. Like, look at what Steph Curry did last year. If I'm remembering right, led the league in points per game with some absurd number, and him and Draymond both play a good handful of the games last year, and the Warriors were really bad. But then they revamped their surrounding cast, and how much better have they been this year? Like, I'm not trying to say that Fox and Sabonis are Curry Draymond caliber.
You said it. You said it. I heard you.
I did. The Warrior comparisons, they have to keep going. So it's just the surrounding cast matters a lot. And just because technically it's not resulting in wins, these big nights from De'Aaron Fox, doesn't mean to me that he's not capable of contributing to winning basketball. You just need other guys helping you surrounding, because even last night, 12 made threes, 4 of those are from De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah, and 3 of them were from Harrison Barnes. If you take away those, we're looking at they were 7 of 13. That means that the rest of the players on the team were 5 of 21 from 3, 1 of 5 from Lyles, 1 of 4 from Holiday. Damian Jones and Alex Len both bricked theirs. Donte DiVincenzo goes 0 for 3. Davion Mitchell was okay, 2 for 4, and Metu was 1 of 2. But the point is that if the other players outside of Barnes and Fox do something like hit 40% or 35%, even if they hit 30%, you probably are in the game. You probably have a shot at least at, the potential to win that game. It's just when no one is hitting shots, which they haven't since the trades, that's a problem. And That's why we keep saying, they're going to have to improve those positions around Fox and Barnes and Sabonis. I think it's pretty clear that's going to have to happen. I don't think they're hollow stats. I've watched hollow stats. I've watched players on teams that, like they're just putting up 20 a game because they can coast to 20 and their team has no chance to win. It's kind of like Lamont Murray was a guy who like bounced around the league, putting up 20 for teams and never won. And like, that's not totally to call out Lamont Murray and say he's a bad player. It's to say that if you put him on a team with, say, 4 or 5 good players, he's probably going to be number 6 or 7. And he's not going to average 20 games. He's going to average like 14 a game. But he's doing that because he has the opportunity. Again, like, I think there are times where even if I looked at the Kings and I said, okay, are they just putting up numbers? I think, yes, Buddy Hield just put up numbers. There has been times where straight up he's just going out there and trying to get stats at the end of a game so his stats don't look so bad. So his 3-point numbers look good. Clearly, there were multiple games, even this season, where he goes 0 for 7 or 0 for 8 in the first half, and the game is over and they're down 20 something, and he's in the early fourth quarter and he hits 3 threes in a row, and all of a sudden he's got 12 or 15 points, and it's just they're hollow because you already shot yourself out of the game. You're still down 20. You're just hitting threes now and it doesn't matter. I don't get that with Fox. I don't like a lot of his points come in the fourth quarter. A lot of his points come in the first quarter. Like, I just don't see it. So maybe I'm crazy.
No, I'm with you. I think it's still a question of, on an eventual team that's fighting for Western Conference finals sort of things, like can he be a number one? I still think that's a question in the air.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm kind of in the, maybe if he's a 1B and there's a 1A, that like maybe that's a scenario that could work. But I think the fact that it's still a question because there are guys that put up numbers where you just flat out know like that is not a top option on that caliber of a team. But kind of like on the surrounding guys, what do you make of Donte getting 12 minutes? Alvin told us not to read into it too much, but I am definitely reading into it.
You're reading into it. I don't know. I think it's interesting because we had Donte. First of all, he had his best game as a King, I believe, the game before. And then they gave him to us at practice on Tuesday. So we had conversations with Donte. And so I don't know. I think they're a little bit caught in this area with Donte because, you do control how much some of the money that he's going to make this summer. And, whether he's going to make, we've talked about like ballpark figures, right? And I know he turned down like a 3 or 4 year, $8 to $10 million a year contract from the Bucks. I know he turned that down. I think it was a 3-year 24 or 3-year 20, a 3-year 30 or something right around there. And then he hasn't had a great season, and so you got to wonder what he's going to make. I know that like according to my sources, like he's probably looking for a 4-year 40 or a 3-year 30, maybe a little bit more than that, mid-level exception money. And they think that while there isn't a lot of cap space out there this year for teams, everyone has an MLE, so like he will get offers. And I think for that money, the Kings are probably going to keep him. But at the same time, if like he doesn't finish that strong and he's still like a bit all over the board, and that you already have 6.5 tied up in Justin Holiday next year, 6.3, and you still have Terrence Davis at $4 million, all of a sudden if you're going to put $20 million in the shooting guard position, but no one is really a starting caliber, then that's a problem. And so I think I want to see him start. I've said that a bunch, not because I think he should be the starter next year. It's because I want to know if he should be the starter next year. I want to see him build chemistry. I want to see what he looks like when he's not pulling up and shooting ill-advised, off the dribble 3-pointers. And he's doing that because he can, because he's one of the number one scoring options on the second unit. You put him in the starting lineup, and does he take those shots? Does he still do that? And if he does, can you tell him not to? And, can starters tell him not to, as opposed to bench players trying to tell him not to? Like in the moment, as opposed to like calling a timeout and saying, hey, man, don't do that again if you're the coach. But like, I need to see more of him. And I was really surprised that we saw so much less of him.
It's weird. The lineup that we saw him out there a lot too was Davion Mitchell had like this weird hip thing that went on, and him and Donte, Davion and Donte both came in the same time. I want to say it's about 140 left in that first quarter, and then Davion only plays the rest of that first, and then goes back into the locker room because of a slight hip thing that was weird. And Alvin said there's no concerns there. Davion came back later in the game, but that means that Donte's in a lineup where he's just surrounded by tough. It's not a good lineup, and he's asked to do too much. He's the point guard. It's Donte DiVincenzo, Justin Holiday, Chimezie Metu, Trey Lyles, and Damian Jones. Donte, while I've been impressed with his playmaking, the only guy that can pass in a lineup. I don't know if that's the best for him. There's no guys that are creating their own shots in that lineup outside of, first quarter was over, so Trey Lyles was past that moment, I guess. But he got asked to do a little bit too much, because when I, was talking about it a little bit on Twitter of, he only played 12 minutes, and I didn't feel great about that. A lot of people are like, well, he didn't play very good. I don't think that he was given a great opportunity. And where I really take issue with this is that we've heard Donte talk about he's been struggling to get back into a rhythm since he's come back from injury. He played those 17 games with Milwaukee, and he was like, I'm fighting coming back myself and getting a rhythm, but also the rotation, an inconsistent rotation in Milwaukee. And now he's dealing with the same thing in Sacramento. And maybe this is just the outlier. Outside of this, like this is the outlier right now. But I think that if this is a guy that needs to get back into a rhythm, recovering from injury, which makes sense to me, and I think we clearly see comparing last year to this year for him, that he does need to get consistent opportunity to kind of work through that.
I agree. I agree with all of that. Like, I would like to see him get a full run to figure out if he's the answer. Like, because, I mean, not to, like, I don't think Justin Holiday is the answer. I don't think he'll be the starting shooting guard on the Kings next year. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. There's always a possibility, but I mean, I look at him as much as a trade chip or a rotational piece that you can use here and there as anything. Like will there be games where he plays plenty? Sure. If he gets hot, if he starts blocking shots like he did, against Denver, you're like, sure, like he can play, but he's more of a back into the rotation guy, in my opinion. And he's also more of a guy that, when you really look at his game, like he's clearly a fifth option in most offensive sets. And you talked about DiVincenzo, as far as like when he came in the game. From what I see, he didn't play in the first quarter. He came in at the beginning of the second. And again, he's like his minutes are totally limited when you're doing that. Like he's the one guy who's kind of sitting there watching, and then he comes in after everyone else. And they're staggering, they're trying to like give Fox a little break and then bring him back and then put him back on the bench. Like they're doing some very interesting substitution patterns, which Brenden, just so people know, before we came on, Brenden sent me a link to a site that I used to go to years ago, but now like I'll probably end up going here a lot more. And it's called popcornmachine.net, and it breaks down literally like the substitution patterns and how players did in each of their stints. So again, I think, again, Trey Lyles plays all but the last minute 48 of the first quarter. He was absolutely spectacular, 5 of 6 from the field, 3 of 3. Then he plays almost the entire second quarter as well, all but the final minute 37, and doesn't fare as well. 1 of 3 from the field, 0 of 2. Then he doesn't score again. And you see his minutes in the second half. He ends up playing a ton of minutes, but you may have like burned him out in the first half by playing him too many minutes in a row, by playing him almost the entire first quarter, sitting him for like a minute and 48 seconds, and then almost all of the second quarter. He walked out of the first half with 20 minutes. And like I don't know that Trey Lyles is a guy that should be playing 20 minutes in a half, and certainly he shouldn't be playing 40 minutes in a game. Like you need to like give Chimezie Metu or someone else minutes in that game to try to like mix things up. And I thought actually Metu was really good in that game. But again, if you guys want to look at some of those stats and some of the rotational things, um, there are a lot of people on the internet that do some really cool stuff that I don't think get enough exposure. So like Popcorn Machine is one. Brenden, what are some of the others that you like to go to?
Cleaning the glass is definitely one that I really like. I use dunksandthrees.com sometimes, not as much as cleaning the glass. Like Synergy and Instat are the two that are pretty expensive but amazing at having clips available for people. Those are the ones that stand out to me. I'm sure I'm forgetting others.
Yeah, I've always used 82games.com, which is I think it's Mark Deeks, which incredible stuff. But like it shows you sort of advanced stats on like not only like take Harrison Barnes for an example. You could look at Harrison Barnes' stats as a at the three and at the four, and what his PER is at the three, and how much percentage of his time he spends at the three, and how much percentage of his time he spends at the four, what his PER is, what his PER against is, what is like his overall net rating is in each of those positions for the time that he's on the floor. So again, I think there are a lot of people out there that are doing amazing work, and so if you get sort of a wild hair to start getting into something specific, like I know Brenden likes to get into like film breakdown. I'm not so much a film breakdown guy. I love the salary cap. So like Larry Kuhn is one of my guys. Like I know Larry well, and I can text him and say, hey, I'm stuck here on this question. But like the CBA FAQ that he has is absolutely incredible. And if you use like the easiest way to like navigate the site is you just use like Command F or whatever, and so you can actually find specific things like all over the website that you're looking for, because it is like a gigantic wall of words. But like it's the finer nuances of a salary cap. Like when we talk about things like starter criteria, or what used to be base year compensation, or like when can you extend a player, when can you not extend a player. Like the Kings could not have extended Harrison Barnes last summer, but now that he's in the final year, he's going to enter the final year of his contract, they can't extend him. The Sabonis questions about extensions. Can you trade De'Aaron Fox in his first year of a $28 million contract? Yes, but can you trade him in the year before where he's making 8.2, but he already has a $28.2 million contract for next year? There's a way that those two contracts like intermingle that has to be met in a trade. So there are a lot of things that I like to dig into when it comes to trades, when it comes to salary cap, like advanced questions that, sometimes I've got to pull my wife down and say, hey, look, I need you to like look at the lawyerese of this and explain to me what am
Translate.
I missing here? Yeah, because there are some like translation issues here that I need you to like walk me through here. But like there are a lot of people out there. We cover the Kings, so hopefully you're getting your niche of Kings coverage from guys like us who are doing, we're doing a lot of good work. We're at the arena every day. We're trying to give you video content and podcasts and writing and social media content and all that stuff. But there are all of these other avenues that if you have some interest in basketball, the NBA, there's so many talented people out there, and a lot of these guys eventually they get scooped up, man. They get scooped up by teams. Like I remember Sebastian Prudi was like the godfather of like video breakdown, and or even he would use stills with all these little like arrows going one way, like explaining complex things. And I thought it was great to read his stuff, and he got scooped up, and I think he's still in a front office somewhere. But like a lot of these guys end up becoming salary cap experts for teams, or scouts, or things like that, because they just have an interest and they start digging into it, and it opens a door.
Yeah, Jeff Siegel was Early Bird Rights, which was my favorite cap sheet site to go to for the last like 2 years or so. And he got picked up by Clutch Sports Agency. The cap sheet I go to now is Spotrac, Spotrac. I'm pretty sure Keith Smith is the one that does a lot of the upkeep there. And Keith is a great Twitter follow as well. But yeah, there's a whole lot of things out there for sure. And there are definitely people that all of a sudden disappear, and yeah, you can probably figure out why.
Yeah, it's a hard business too. Like these guys are doing this work. A lot of them they're doing it in like out there in anonymity. They're anonymous people. Like even like Basketball References, like it's been such a game changer for every professional sport, like baseball reference, football reference, all of it. I use it daily. I use it for shot charts. I use it for all kinds of stuff. ESPN. I mean, NBA, especially for like the media, we have like a portal that we can go into and look at stats. A lot of times it's awesome. Sometimes like you have to have like the right browser or bogs, and it's just horrible to work with.
They have
Yeah,
everything, but it's terribly hard to navigate.
very, very hard. Yeah, and it's hiding. So even like last week or on Tuesday, we talked. I think we talked about Sunday musings and how I was looking up like the Luke Walton era of offensive rating, defensive rating, pace, all that stuff versus the Alvin Gentry era. And I mean, the offense is slightly better under Gentry. The pace is like almost identical under both coaches, but the defensive rating, and for all those people out there like Luke had the worst defense ever. It's like, no, he did not. It's even worse under Alvin. Their defensive rating, although they played good defense yesterday, so it could change the rating. But it was like 115 defensive rating versus Luke Walton's 110 defensive rating. So neither of those are great, but at the same time, you're looking at situations where you can look at advanced stats and start breaking them down in a different way.
Definitely. Yeah, there's a whole lot of resources, and translating and explaining them is definitely a acquired skill that I've worked on over time, because there's a lot of times where maybe I go on a pod or in an article, kind of just word vomit a bunch of numbers, or I go into something with an outline of, man, I found so many good stats to back up my point, and then I always like to throw my articles by a friend that is not like as nerdy or obsessed with basketball as I am, but more just casually watches. And sometimes it's like, man, this is too heavy right here. And translating it is, and what it means and why it's applicable, is definitely a skill also.
Yeah, I think that's like when I'm writing, one of the biggest things that I like to do is I try to make specifically salary cap situations like palatable, digestible for like the common fan. That's always like I'll try to explain it, and I'll explain on the radio as well or on the podcast. But like the key is to try to make it so people go, oh, okay, I think I follow you. And if I don't, that's okay. I think I have enough of an idea that I can follow what you're saying. And so that, like you get better and better and better at that as time goes by. It becomes like, again, having people read it like what you're doing that don't understand it or aren't interested in it. Which again, my wife edits almost everything that I do. She is an attorney. She can edit, and she's an incredible editor as well. All right, so we've gone through like all kinds of stuff. The one thing we haven't gone through is there's a article out today from Sam Amick on The Athletic, where he hung out with Sabonis, which was cool because now Brenden gets to see that play out. So Brenden watched he watched the one-on-ones happen on Tuesday during practice where Sam was with Sabonis and then Logan Murdoch was with De'Aaron Fox, so I'm sure that's coming out soon. And then I had some time with De'Aaron. I had a little bit of time with Alvin, like how those things happen. But Sabonis had some interesting things to say about the trade. Like there's some cool things in there. I think people should read it because I it's hard to ask somebody a question like you don't always want to ask. You don't want to ask a personal question that you don't at least know part of the answer to of a player because then you can get yourself in a whole bunch of trouble. Like I remember like very distinctly where a reporter got hung up with JaVale McGee and asked him if his mom was still with us, which was probably the most awkward moment I've seen in a long time. And it was just like, it was a mistake on a reporter's part who probably thought they had an idea of where they were going, but then got a little self-conscious midway through the question and was like, oh, wait, what if I ask that question and his mom isn't around? But when it comes to Sabonis, he doesn't talk about his dad very often. And so there's a couple of things in there about Arvydas, which again, like Arvydas Sabonis, like growing up, I watched Arvydas Sabonis play. One of the most incredible things to watch of all time. It kind of like Jokic, or maybe even a mixture of Domas and Jokic, where he did a lot of the same things with his hands, a lot of the tricky things, the passing, the incredible passing that Arvydas Sabonis could do. But like you've perused through the article a little bit. It was good to hear him say that like during the trade, his mom and his dad had come out for the holidays, and then they decided to stay and stick around his family because they were worried that a big trade would happen, and they stayed around to help out, right? And so I thought that was interesting, and it kind of opens the door for us to have like more discussions about Domas and his dad, and sort of that connection, and how much did he learn from his dad.
Yeah, we definitely don't hear much from Sabonis about it. My knowledge all comes from you or my dad about Arvydas. Can't say I ever watched Arvydas, to be honest. But yeah, I think it is interesting because kind of weird that we don't hear about it very often. It's cool to hear that they stuck around Arvydas and his mom after the whole trade went down. Pieces in there that like we've heard Domas say, I don't remember if it was a practice or post game, but still doesn't feel fully at home because he's living in a hotel across from Golden One Center still, which Sam talks about in the piece. And I think the thing that kind of stood out the most is what's thrown in at the end here when Sam talks to Domas about his future with Sacramento, right? And what that looks like.
Yeah, excited to be part of that and build it. I want to stay as long as I can. Everything has to go well, but I'm happy here. It's awesome. Yeah, I mean the Kings need to make sure that they build a team around this guy. But I also do think that there's a good chance that he's going to be a long-term fixture in Sacramento. They did this trade with the understanding that he is going to be a franchise cornerstone and really like one of the biggest pieces of that cornerstone, like of the build that they're going to build out.
Yeah, and you just gotta, as we've said a lot, gotta keep that build going. Gotta add to it this offseason.
We were going to go to the business of basketball. The business of basketball. We had a topic, and I didn't write it down, and now I've forgotten the topic. What were we going to talk about on the business of basketball, Brenden?
I don't know, James. You're the one with the crazy memory.
Yeah, but the short-term memory is shot.
It's true. You
Absolutely shot. Let's do this. I think you're learning every single day. You're taking in things. Going into the summer, what is it that you want to? How do you want to build out sort of your toolbox this summer? because I think you're getting through the first season and you're living the dream and you're like, okay, this is crazy. This is crazy. What do you want to do more of? What do you want to focus on? How do you want to grow as a reporter? Because we're going to go into an off season where, there's going to be a lot of things happening right away. I guarantee you in the first week, we're going to have potential coaching changes and like this thing's going to be like pretty crazy. And you're going to go through that. But like once we settle into the dog days of summer, you're going to need to figure out like who you are and what voice you have and those types of things. So what are you hoping or wanting to expand and work on this summer?
Yeah, I think that I'm definitely going to spend a lot of the summer now that I have, and I've said this before, but my idea and understanding of this gets better just the more reps, obviously. But I'll get to actually, lock in somewhat of what I want my weeks to look like going into next season and kind of have time to actually sit there and plan that out with 2 or 3 podcasts and X amount of articles. And I do want to start doing YouTube content, like video content of, breaking down plays and also working together. Like if there's the game yesterday, for example, you hear, I don't remember an exact quote on something that happened with the game. Oh, De'Aaron talking about forcing turnovers. They forced 20 turnovers, where I can have De'Aaron talking and at the same time all these clips of the turnovers going on and kind of those overlapping. So I kind of want to play with video content, but I think a lot of it is going to be just now that I know what it looks like, getting a plan in place for a schedule and consistency going into next year. And also before this year ends, like I think I said this on the last business of basketball. My voice isn't deep enough, James.
The business of basketball. I got you.
That, I want to build relationships as this year ends, but then also navigating how to keep those up throughout the off season since we're not going to be around. Like, I still don't know if, like, do you keep in contact? Do you give, like, how much space? And, I think every situation is probably going to be different, playing it by ear, but going through the first time of dealing with all that, I think there's a handful of things. So while I'm also going to be, and of course I'm going to be on the draft and free agency and all that, and I typically spend the offseason as a way to get caught up on what's going on with the rest of the league because so in tune with everything that's going on with the Kings, but trying to get a better understanding of like, yeah, Jordan Poole got so much better this year, but what specific aspects of the game is he better in? And things like that. It gives me time to brush up on some other guys. So I have my ideas for where I want to expand a little bit, but I think also dealing with an off season with this sort of access and really cemented goal in mind of this being a profession is going to be its own thing in a way as well. And there's still plenty of areas to find content and ways to keep myself busy.
I think there's a ton of ways to keep yourself busy. I never shut off during the off season. I maybe don't post as much, but still it's going to be a lot of content. I think the biggest thing for me, like when I look at, we're coming out of this we're starting to come out of the COVID, the pandemic period, right? And we don't know fully what media access is going to look like next year. There is a battle right now going on behind the scenes as to whether we'll have locker room access, about if that's going to be tiered, like who's going to get in the locker room if we are going to have locker room access. There's all of these things that still have yet to be figured out. But I'll say this on Tuesday, that was the most normal day that we've had in so long. And it was because as soon like first of all, they've allowed us to take our masks off. Sometimes you still feel like you're in a weird setting and you need to put your mask on. But like everyone that we're around is double vax from, well, they've had their boosters and everything else, especially media. Like we can't be in the building without it. So we have like a little bit of a safety net. Things have cooled down a little bit as far as like the variants and stuff like that. So we were able to take our masks off at practice, and it just led to more conversations, quiet conversations off the record or even on the record, but one-on-one conversations I miss that so much because like there are a couple of different ways that you write, sort of like, so you have your like your quick analysis pieces, you have your big analysis pieces when it, you're breaking down numbers or you're breaking down salary contracts, like all that stuff. But then I also write columns, so every Sunday I write Sunday musings, right? And that's a column where I'm giving you more of a look into my thought process, where I think the team is going, or like some, just again, my thoughts. They're like, if you've followed me long enough, like Sunday musings, sometimes I'll talk about like going to an A's playoff game with my son. Sometimes I'll talk about, like, there's a lot of different things that I can go. But then feature writing is something that like is dying because we don't have the access, and no one wants to write a feature based off of like Zoom questions, because by the time you go to write a long form piece and you've collected all these quotes and stuff, those quotes have been out there like on social media, like everyone's seen the video, or a lot of people have already seen the video. Someone else has already written on those quotes. Like, you lose the power of like what makes your piece different. So you can, and that's going to be like, that's the hardest part about this entire, like, covering a team during a pandemic, besides like trying to stay safe and all that stuff. The hardest thing is that we all get the same content every single time. So if you have some idea and you want to write about something, you have to ask a question that's being recorded and put out there for everyone to see. So how do you keep framing out your piece? And what it does is it forces you to be like your writing has to be different for sure. But it also, at a certain point, you're just like, I don't want to just keep giving you the same quotes that everyone else has got. That's just not that intriguing to anyone. So I think we've ditched a lot of the feature writing, and I'm excited to write long form pieces on guys like Sabonis and the Sabonis, you know, Domantas and Arvidas. I'm excited to, get into some of the De'Aaron Fox stuff, and so that it's kind of getting back to basics, but it also is really hard to get back to basics during the summer because now you're not around them anymore. So we got to pick and choose how we do this. But I definitely think that, even on the podcast front, like the goal, the beginning of the season, it was to do one podcast with Sean and I talking and a second podcast with me interviewing someone. That just fell by the wayside. That's not the way the season went. It's not the way the access went. And we're going to get back to that, where we're interviewing people, as a third, as part of the podcast. But like, we had to make changes because that's sort of the access and how everything went. So I'm excited to get a little bit back to normal, and to keep growing with guys like Brenden and guys like Sean on podcast. And I think it's fun. We're creating something different in Sacramento. But it's because we're kind of forced to create something different in Sacramento. The media market is crazy small, and it keeps getting smaller. And I want more voices in the room, and I'm glad that Brenden is one of those voices in the room. Frankie over 1140. The two new guys at Fox. Well, new guys, but Chris and Lindsay at Fox 40. Just fresh blood, giving us more people to ask questions and be part of the conversation, because I think it stimulates you in a different way. And like, maybe someone asks a question and you hear something in an answer that you didn't expect to hear, and then you go chase that story because that story seems intriguing to you. And we just really haven't had that opportunity. So I'm hoping we get back to a little bit of normalcy and basics next season.
Yeah, I'm definitely glad to be a part of it, and finally at a point where I can actually listen and hear keywords and repeating terms in all these answers, instead of sitting there repeating my question to myself over and over, and being all quietly stressed and anxious to myself. So that helps a little bit too as well. And this off season, there's a good chance we gotta learn a new coaching staff.
And new coaches, new first round picks, new, we're gonna have a California Classic again, from what I know. Not that I'm breaking news here, but I'm pretty sure there's going to be a California Classic again. Las Vegas is going to be a little bit more expanded as far as the summer league. It's going back to its normal state, from what I've heard.
Got to defend the championship.
See, but you got to try to get to Vegas and experience summer league once. It's a good time. I don't want to do it a bunch anymore because number one, I like melt in the sun, and there's nothing hotter than going to Vegas and for summer league. I mean, it's just like so incredibly hot. So anyway, I like there's a lot to the summer that I'm excited to see you get to take part in, and I'm looking for some normalcy. It should be fun. Plus, I get to go to the Final Four, so coming up we're gonna have some weirdness where like we might have to cancel like Sunday musings and the weekend review on Saturdays because I'm going to the Final Four in New Orleans for the two games on Saturday and the game on the championship game on Monday. So that should be fun. But you'll get content from there, and sort of, especially if guys like Chet Holmgren make it all the way to the finals, it should be interesting. All right, Brenden, do you have any final thoughts?
I don't know that I do. I really like AJ Griffin and Keegan Murray, but still am doing a little bit more research.
Keegan Murray, he's growing on me. Keegan Murray's growing, and let's be honest, the Kings they could use a shooting guard, they could use a stretch four, a defensive-minded stretch four. They could even use a starting level 3, and Barnes can move over. They have to have a long-term idea what they're going to do at that 3 if Barnes decides he's not going to stick around. So, like, there's a lot of players in this draft that fit what the Kings need, from like 1 through 10. And I think it's intriguing.
It definitely is. Actually, last thing I'll say, Nemish Keita is, unless I'm misled here, but I believe he's going to be playing with Stockton today. And 7 p.m. playing against James Wiseman. So that should be a fun one to check out.
Yeah, Nemi is supposed to be back. I was surprised Nemi didn't play last night. Especially just like, I don't want to bash on Alex Len. He's got so much going on behind the scenes. Like, people, like, if you're watching Alex Len and you're going to be critical of his play, just know that, like, his entire world is under assault in Ukraine. And so, yeah, he's going through it, like lots of stress. And so I thought we were probably going to see Nemi last night, and I was surprised that we didn't. Especially, he was in uniform, he was there. I hope the good people of Portugal didn't stay up all night. See, I want to go to Portugal and go hang out with Nemi in Portugal. That would be fun.
There you go. Yeah, that definitely would be fun.
I'd just write that whole trip off. Just go to Portugal, hang out with Nemi, write it off. It's one big tax write-off.
Why not?
That's right. All right, so let's touch base again. The Off the Record with the Kings Beat Virtual Happy Hour Part 4, Infectious Disease Control with Scott Moak is scheduled for March 24th from 5:30 to 7 p.m., 5:30 to 7:30, because we always go long. I just expanded it out for 2 hours. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you're a premium subscriber of the Kings Beat if you want to partake in that. It's a good time. I will be drinking and hanging out and having good, like, there's some good questions that we got going. He's got some crazy stories, especially he's going to go through his like what it's like to be a voice on 2K, the video game. So that's fun. The Kevin Durant story is fun. Lots of other things. Outside of that, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, all that stuff. And then my final thought, because of the pandemic, and because of the way his career path has gone, I had not seen DeMarcus Cousins in person for a while. He got done with warm-ups, and then he went and sat on like the stanchion during pregame yesterday, and so many people from Sacramento came to say hello, came to give him hugs. Sign lady and Nico came over. Andrew, his guy who, was with him for years to start his career and is still based out of Sacramento. Taro from McCooney and Phil Oates, and like so many people were there to like come over and greet him and say hi to him. It was fun to see Boogie. We had a cool moment where he made fun of me for having a goatee, because he's like, "Oh, you're growing up now," and it's like I'm so much older than Boogie Cousins, but he also has white hair in his beard, and we had a good laugh about it. But it's interesting to see someone. I broke into the league with DeMarcus Cousins in the 2010-2011 season. That was his rookie season. That was my rookie season as a reporter. When my first one-on-one as a reporter, I sat down with DeMarcus and did like a Q&A with him. I had no idea what I was getting into, but it was fun. And it's cool to see somebody, it hasn't gone the way that you thought it would go with him. He did envision being a Hall of Fame player. That's probably not going to happen. But still, it's good to catch up. It's good to see the big guy. And I wish him nothing but the best here towards the end of the season. I hope that it goes well for him there with Michael Malone, because that's fun. And that team is fun. And that team has a shot, especially if they get a couple of players back before the end of the season. Even if they don't, they still are strong and can make a little bit of noise. So hat tip to Boogie. It's good to see him.
Definitely, yeah. He's been playing well too.
Yeah. He did not play well against the Kings.
He did not.
But no, he did not. All right, so that's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. Thanks for jumping in and being subscribers and all the things that you guys have done to help the Kings Beat. Make sure to go to the merch shop. You can find promo codes down below. And I think that's going to do it. So for Brenden Nunes, I am James Ham. Thanks for tuning in to the Kings Beat podcast. We'll see you next week.